What I think is very useful here is probably to make the distinction that I use in the way I teach between being brave and having courage. I like to distinguish between those. And brave is when you push through in the face of adversity, almost in spite of what's going on. And courage is about opening the heart. Cœur is the root word for courage. It's the French, the heart. And it's about keeping the heart expansive in the circumstances you're dealing with. And I would like you to have a courageous practice rather than a brave practice.
Exactly.
Very nice.
Very nice. It borders on something Pauline and I were talking about the other day about all of this. Doesn't it, Pauline?
Yeah.
Courageous is the word, really, isn't it? Rather than brave.
Yeah, brave is it's a closing down, and courage is an opening.
Say again, Elizabeth.
I said brave is surely keeping it going in adversity. Courage is well. But
I would say brave. I mean, what the actual definition of these two words are is another matter. But I like to make a distinction in the way that I use them. And brave has a pushing through, and adversity, yes, but it's a pushing through in spite of what's going on.
Yeah.
Yes. And courage is more embracing the situation. And for me, and staying open in that circumstance. Yes. So bravery has the kind of a condensing in and a sort of compressing and a closing down and a narrowing of focus. And courage for me has the opposite. It's an expansion, it's an opening up, it's a seeing all the possibilities and recognizing those, but keeping the heart open.
Yes, no, I like the difference. Yes, the definitions, the different definitions. Thank you.
Yeah. And whether anyone in the Oxford English Dictionary would agree with that is another matter altogether. But I think it's a helpful way of looking at something. Yeah. And so you can invite someone to be courageous without them needing to feel that they need to be brave.
I really like that distinction.
Yes, I like that distinction.
I really like that because it doesn't change the what is. It changes the kindness and approach with which one's going to deal with the what is.
Yeah.
The
courage isn't a disregarding. Bravery is kind of disregarding the circumstances and acting in spite of or because of. Courage is an embracing of the circumstances.
That's just the point. Should Jane go on when she should say, that was wonderful, but I'm going to go and lie down?
Absolutely. This is the courage, is the capacity to see what's going on, to see it for itself, and to do what keeps the heart open. Because if Jane finds that she's pushing through regardless, she'll find this closing down.
As I did yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. And so that's what we need to look at. Yeah.
We'll keep working on that, Jane.
Say again, Pauline.
We'll keep working on that one.
We will keep working on that because Pauline and I had a conversation yesterday which touched on this very, very thing. How do you deal? How does one deal with the intensity of a situation, a feeling or a pain or something, without the pushing through, but with a way that's going to give you the strength to improve it? And that is a very difficult one because the pain particularly is one where you just rip against it and you think, I'm going to get through it. And I'm not sure that works for me.
Well, doesn't work
for me, Hugh. What works for me is what you taught me 4 years ago, 5 years ago in Dorset, where you would just calmly say to me as I went into one, breathe, release, relax. And that has been the best mantra I have ever had, because I still get all the spasms. I still get all the, this hurts like, but I don't have the same reaction.
Yeah.
And it has made the most enormous difference in my ability to manage the sheer physical onslaught of the suddenness of it. It's the suddenness of it.
Yeah.
Yes. So breathe, relax,
Breathe, release,
release,
relax.
release, relax.
I think
Yes,
that-
I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and she woke up last week and she was absolutely rigid with pain all through her joints. She'd never felt anything like it before. So I could perhaps pass that on to her somehow.
Yeah.
It sounded awful. It's a real shock, and she's got this handicapped old husband. Well, I mean, he doesn't do
Oh, yes. You know, none of us, of course, are old.
it.
That category.
No.
I mean, what's very interesting here is something that we miss when we're dealing with pain. And what we need to recognize with pain is that there's two components. One is a deeply unpleasant sensation in the body, and the other is the mind's reaction to that unpleasant sensation. And for most people, it's aversion, but not entirely. I've had clients who are quite addicted to their pain, but they're a minority. So mostly it's an aversion. And the sense of aversion in the mind is what we label pain.
Yes.
Not the sensation. So what we can do is, if we allow ourselves to see this separation of these two things, is at some level to be with the unpleasant sensation is one thing, and to relax the mind so that the reaction which we would normally experience as painful is different. And so what I get clients who are in, suffer from chronic pain, saying things that once they get used to this, they say, well, I know the pain's still there, but somehow it doesn't hurt so much.
Exactly. That's where I talk to.
And that's then beginning to work with this separation of the two things.
The sensation still exists.
Absolutely.
Unless it's a spasm or a cramp, and then, but it can go faster if I can let go of everything else, the spasm or the cramp. But the rest of it that I'm breathe, release, relax, it's still there. The sensation is still there.
And when you've got a localized sensation, rather than a generalized one, but even with a generalized one, you can do this with the edges of the body. When you've got a localized sensation, you can soften around the edges of it. Don't go into it, because that's trying to do something quite different. But when you soften around the edges of the sensation of pain, what you're actually working with is your relationship to it.
Can you say more? I know we're talking about stuff which doesn't have words, but for the purposes of trying to get to that stage. So you're approaching this black cloud, and you're not going to completely pull down your sails and go straight into it. You're going to try and go around it to see what you can make of it.
When we're dealing with that, and a black cloud, I think is quite a nice analogy, because these things are not always clearly defined. You know they're there, but but you also know parts of your body where they're not, where it feels more normal in the body, more familiar. And so what you do is you work from the familiar towards the black cloud. And when you get to the edges where you begin to see that the familiar is fading and the black cloud is influencing, you soften around the edges of that area. When you work with the edges, you're working with mind's relationship to that experience, not with the condition itself.
So then we're back to the definition of softening.
Yes. Yeah. So we recognize there's an uncomfortable feeling. In the recognition, we're no longer lost in it, because recognizing it has enabled us to step back a little, and we can be more of an observer rather than just in the subjective experience. And then we choose to redirect our attention, because our mind is being pulled into this pain or this uncomfortable feeling. So we choose to redirect our attention back to something else, which might be, we might choose it to be our breath, or we might choose it to be the feeling of loving kindness or whatever. We relax any bracing and holding around our brain, which is the reaction to that uncomfortable feeling that caught us. We softly smile, which is a relaxing of tension. And not only that, but the mechanical act of just lifting the corners of your eyes and lifting the corners of your mouth has a response in the physical brain. And it enables a different relationship to start. So this mechanical movement sends a signal to the brain and has a response. And then we redirect to something, if we consider the way we got lost in the pain as unhelpful or unwholesome, then we redirect our attention to something more wholesome, which may be our breath, or our feeling of loving kindness, or anything that we're practically doing during the day. If it's not a formal meditation, you know, we might be reading a book, we might be going for a walk, we might be doing whatever, and we bring the mind back, and then we'll see the mind get pulled out again, and we keep repeating. But every time you repeat that, you're building within your physical brain a different response to pain, because it's a counterintuitive instruction, what I'm asking you to do. And so we don't have what they now call these days a neural pathway for that response. But if we continue to repeat this repeatedly and allowing ourselves to do this, then we begin to generate a different response to physical pain. And that's really, really helpful. A lot of this comes from the meditation tradition, and there's a Buddhist sutta called the two darts, and the two darts are quite simple. The first dart is the condition that creates this bad, difficult or uncomfortable sensation, and everybody has that. And then the second dart is for those who don't work as we've just described, and who just have sheer aversion to this, and they may take it personally. And that's what the aversion has done. This is my pain. This is me. It's mine. My body's letting me down. It's all the me's and my's and I's and all the rest of it. Whereas if we can relax away from that, we begin to readdress that sense of personal ownership, and almost like a personal insult that this pain represents. Yeah.
You're right. It's a personal insult. Pauline, what?
Is all this on the tape, Hugh? Is this conversation on the tape?
I can make it available on the recording for this week.
Because I would really like to listen to it again. There's so much.
What I'll do is I'll take our pictures off, and you'll just have the voice and the conversation.
It would be just nice to listen to that conversation again, because there was so many positives there.
Well, this is I think what's very encouraging is the fact that this isn't saying that the condition is going to change. This isn't a curing of what's going on, but at one level it is a healing about what's going on.
Yeah.
Our distress certainly can make the pain feel a lot worse.
Yes, and you see, I've now had whatever it is since you worked with me so much that time in Dorset. 4 or 5 years I've had of using this, and I feel like a testimonial in a, I don't know what. I can really say that it has got me through so much of stuff that I was really not getting through, not just cramping against, fighting against, being brave.
Yes. It's the difference between brave and courage. You see, the willingness to hold this feeling softly is, in my book, the most courageous thing you can do.
Yes. Keep trying.
Yeah, because you're facing what it is, and you're staying expansive.
We'll try.
And it's very difficult when you've had pain for a long time.
20 years.
Not to let that pain be who you are.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I don't let it do that, do I, Jane?
I've worked with clients for whom the pain has been part of their identity.
I hide it.
And I've worked with clients who, working with this, and they begin to see the pain disappear, and they actually want to stop the process. And that, you know, I have to trust that that's a completely valid expression for them. But they're so identified with that pain, and that's been physical pain, and it's been emotional pain. I've had clients with both who choose to hold on to it because, you know, it's part of their autobiography now.
It's like my experience in therapeutic situations where I got to the point where I knew what I was doing was not going to move me forward, but I didn't know how to let go of it because I didn't know what I would do instead.
Ah, well, I think that's very eloquently put. Yeah. It's like when we've had clients working through the yoga who suddenly experience the space in their body, and they want the tension back because they don't know what to do with the space. And I think this is a wonderful example of how adaptable the brain is. It accommodates these things. It works around them. It survives. But what we don't recognize at times is it's leaning on them as well as part in that process. And then, you know, it kind of, you're taking that support away, and it's opening up another vista, another opportunity. But it's like, well, what do I do now? You know, I don't have a roadmap for this.